Good afternoon to you. Mark Sott with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Sunday, October 6, 2019. Quite a few things to talk about today. We'll take a look at what's happening in the Western Pacific with a potential typhoon developing. Potential. It's going to happen. Some activity in the subtropics in the Atlantic Basin. And then we're going to really be watching the Southwest and Western Caribbean over the next several days. Probably longer than that, as I do believe we will see development there. Remember, I was thinking we would have 2 to 3 more named storms in the month of October, and I think that's still going to happen, and we'll see. All right, so get rid of my face just for a little bit, and we'll take a look here at the broad picture. Nothing going on in the Atlantic or Eastern Pacific right now, but I think that's going to change eventually. We do have this tropical storm over here in the far Western Pacific. Well, not too far Western Pacific, but you get the idea. How do you say that? Hagibis? Something like that? Tropical storm Hagibis? Nevertheless, there it is, and we'll look at the forecast for this in just a moment. Going to be a very, very powerful typhoon turning up in this direction generally is what it looks like. Does not appear to be a threat to the Philippines, Taiwan, or mainland China, although, as you know, with what we deal with in the Atlantic Basin over here, with systems that curve and whatnot, sometimes they don't, and they come straight in. So we'll see if that's the case with Hagibis. All right? Okay, so why do I think we're going to have at least a couple more named storms in the Atlantic? Well, this is one reason. The Madden-Julian Oscillation forecast, which is basically a scientific way of looking at what we call upward motion, or something that would favor convection. Remember, air that rises is favorable for tropical cyclone formation, whereas air that is sinking and spreading out at the surface is not. Divergent flow at the surface, where air is moving away at the surface, that's not good for development. Tropical cyclones need to pull air in at the surface, and then the air rises vertically, and then it spreads out at the top near the stratosphere, usually in a fairly uniform fashion with anticyclonic flow aloft, divergence aloft, air spreading out in the upper atmosphere. And if that happens, you tend to get some pretty powerful tropical cyclones. And over the next couple of weeks or so, the European model and its ensemble members are forecasting a rather favorable pattern for the Atlantic Basin, Phase 8, Phase 1, and Phase 2. These areas through here, these phases, favor development, generally speaking, in the Atlantic Basin. It does not guarantee development, but it certainly helps. It's not a hindrance. Look at it that way. So, right out of the gate, we see one little yellow X here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And if we look at the 5-day, because this is the 2-day, so then you expand it to 5 days, and this now includes another area over here to the west. But first, this system, a non-tropical low-pressure system, and this means that it gets its origin off of an old frontal boundary through here. It's not tropical in nature, but as I was mentioning yesterday, it could become more tropical, and it gains more tropical characteristics, and that's what they're talking about here from the Hurricane Center. Gradual development of this system is possible while it moves slowly westward, and a tropical or subtropical depression could form by the middle of the week before upper-level winds become unfavorable. So I think it's going to kind of mill around out here. There's Bermuda. This will not impact Bermuda directly, but it'll be an interesting system to watch. Then we have this area, which has a 30% chance of developing, and we can see the origins of this now. There's a low-pressure area out here. It's going to mill around, kind of get trapped, and become one of those hybrid, just off the coast, coastal storms. And we can see that here in the satellite imagery here. This animation from TropicalTidbits.com. Good old Levi Cowan putting together this incredible animation. We appreciate that. Here is the general storminess that will sit and fester off the coast here. And it's going to really raise a ruckus, as they say. And beach erosion, high winds, surf, you name it, all along the mid-Atlantic, parts of the northeast, southeast New England. One of those storms that, may be sort of subtropical in its look, meaning that it'll be spread out, not concentrated, kind of like a glorified nor'easter. Not quite a tropical storm, not quite purely just a nor'easter. Remember, nor'easters generally have sort of that comma shape to them, like that, with a little front sticking off of them. And these subtropical systems kind of look similar to, but not exactly. So that's why we call them, this label, subtropical storm. But this is the energy that's going to lead to that. And then another area of low pressure looks like it's going to try to develop over here. There's energy out in the eastern Atlantic, and energy and thunderstorms festering over the western Caribbean. All kinds of potential out there. Nothing imminent, but I think the next week or so is going to be quite busy. And if we jump and look at the GFS model from this morning's run, this is the entire Atlantic basin, north of the equator anyway. Here's eastern North America. Just outline everything for you so you get your geographic points of reference. Central America, South America, west coast of Africa over here. Nice storm system up in the North Atlantic with the trailing vorticity behind it. And some of this energy right through here is what's going to pinch off and try to organize over the subtropical Atlantic. And then here's some of the energy associated with that disturbance that I showed you on the satellite. And there's the high pressure that's moved offshore. The return flow, kind of nice. Felt nice today. Early this afternoon, I was outside with the family, and I mean, it was perfect. It's not too chilly. The air is a little drier, so it's tolerable. But these are the different players, all right? This is what we have setting up. This is the initial map. And if we just kind of go through time here, this is 24 hours out, and you can see this sort of bending in the pressure field over here, energy trying to bundle and concentrate over here. But notice, everything is stretched out. This energy is stretched out, linear in its look. It's not bundled in a circle or a ball or whatever you want to call it. We call that the conservation of angular momentum, and it's not happening yet. It's trying to. This is oval shape, and it's going to try to bundle its energy just a little bit more. Let's go to the next 24 hours. This is 48 hours out, so Tuesday morning. Now, this really gets going fairly quickly, and I bet that this gets named. And the next name would be Melissa, and it's trapped here south of this sprawling area of high pressure. And then over on the western flank of that high pressure, some more energy trying to focus over here over the fairly warm waters of the western Atlantic. So if we move out another 24 hours, now we're at 72 hours out. And this system will probably hang around for a day or two. It'll generate some wave energy that'll propagate westward, so Bermuda, elsewhere. This will be headed towards your area. Then a much more loosely organized system tries to develop in the coastal waters off the mid-Atlantic states south of New England. And that, too, will start to raise the seas, make them rougher, some squalls offshore, maybe some rain showers, blustery conditions, that kind of thing. And we'll focus on this more as we get closer, but that's 3 days out. Finally, at 4 days out, this first system begins to wane. This starts to intensify more, but look, that's what I was showing you and really getting at. The broad structure to this, it's large. It does have a little bit of a tail on it there, so not quite subtropical. It's more of this frontal kind of deal, hybrid, whatever. But again, remember I talk about this often, especially this year. We label everything with scientific labels, whatever, and that helps to keep up with what's what, and for the scientific community, that's wonderful. But for you and me, and those of you that live over here, Long Island, southern New England, mid-Atlantic, Jersey coast, you name it, down to probably the Outer Banks of North Carolina, this says brisk east to northerly winds, depends on where you are, rough seas, beach erosion, the occasional rain shower, from Cape Cod down to Montauk, Belmar, New Jersey, maybe, Atlantic City, Dover, Delaware, yeah, maybe, Virginia Capes, you get the idea. When you see a storm offshore and it's close enough, there's going to be some impact. So just keep that in mind as we work through the week. This would be Thursday morning, so Wednesday into Thursday, kind of blustery. And by the way, look, there's a high pressure area sitting to the north. Put a H there for high pressure, L there for low pressure. In between is this pressure gradient, the squeezing, if you will, of the wind field. Yeah, pretty strong easterly winds coming in there. Boston, maybe. New York, Long Island Sound, Connecticut, whatever. Just be aware of it, all right? I think it's coming. Maybe, just maybe, a sign of things to come in the winter when we get the wintertime version of these that we call nor'easters. All right, so that's 96. What about 120 hours? Hey, look, it's still there. And again, that's quite a wind field. And so the ocean is really going to be agitated on that western side. Pretty strong high pressure sitting over here. Nothing out in the central Atlantic anymore. That seems to have dissipated. And now that we are at day 5, we start to watch what happens down here. Still, pretty good solid line of easterly trades just kind of blowing through. But they're not screaming through there. See those little barbs, these wind barbs? There's only 1 or 2. You know, we're not seeing 3 barbs, 30 knots. All right, maybe 5 to 10 knots. Not much going on down there. And then look what's happening. It comes through this way, but then the air bends, the flow bends. You get this sort of cyclonic gyre, large area of turning motion centered around Costa Rica and Panama. That's the beginnings at day 5 of what I think will be a tropical cyclone somewhere down in this area. Probably in the Western Caribbean, but it could very well be in the Eastern Pacific. You know, that's certainly a possibility, and more often than not, that's where they do end up developing. So at day 5, that starts to show up. Not day 10, not day 12, day 5. The very first inklings of that begin to show up. So we go out here to day 6, and again, there's that storm system still hanging out. Big wind field. Here's another mid-latitude storm coming in. Colder air on the backside of it. Winter's coming, right? Brace yourselves, right? We need that meme again. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. And I do track the winter storms, and I do cover those in the field. I'll talk about this more once we get into November, especially for our patrons on Patreon. We do winter storms, absolutely, and I'm more capable than ever before. But before we get there, we still have hurricane season to finish up. And even more evidence of something trying to come together down in the Southwest Caribbean. And we'll take a look here at day 7, and then we'll stop at that point. The storminess in the Northwest Atlantic starts to abate. That's an impressive low-pressure area. Wow. Something else there, strong northwesterly flow. You know, pay attention. You know, we're almost to where we start really talking about lower 48 weather from winter storms and other mid-latitude systems, not just the tropics. Then at day 7, yes, this has my attention. It's trying to get together. Look, there's something out there in the Eastern Pacific. We'll keep an eye on that as time progresses. And speaking of Pacific, let's switch over to the Westpac just for a little bit. Here we have Japan. All right, there's Japan. The Philippines down here. Taiwan, Eastern China, the Korean Peninsula. You got it? And that is the vorticity signature of the 12Z GFS today with that typhoon, Hagibis, or however you say it. And if we look at this over the next 7 days, just kind of go through time, steadily marches west-northwest to northwest, and there's that big area of high pressure sprawling out over the Westpac. This tries to come around that, it looks like. Some troughiness, some lower heights up here to the north, coming out of what is that? The eastern parts of, well, part of that's Russia up there. Eastern parts of, we'll call it Eurasia, maybe. Whatever. North of the Korean Peninsula. China's down here, so this would be like the eastern parts of Russia, right? Let me just look at my Google Maps, because doggone it, I hate it when I don't know what I'm talking about. And I don't know everything, even though I'm a geography. So let's look at Russia. Hey, look, when you don't know, you go and you look. You just make darn sure of what you're talking about. All right, so here we are. Don't you love the internet that you can just look this stuff up? So Is it going to label everything? So there's China, but up here, let's see. Sprawling area of trophiness, the Sea of Okhotsk or whatever. Yeah, it's Russia. There it is. I knew what I was talking about. All right, just making sure. Eastern Russia, low heights. That's what I was getting at here. All right, sometimes you just got to trust yourself, but when you're wrong, boy, people will take you to task on it. And I aim for accuracy. So anyway, it comes around this area of high pressure, tries to thread the needle there. We'll see what happens. As I said, you never know. This is 102 hours out. Let's go on out to day 5. Day 6, it's pretty close to Tokyo. And Tokyo is at around the same latitude as Cape Hatteras in North Carolina in terms of latitude. Longitude is way out there at about 140 east, whereas Hatteras is about 75 west longitude, right? I do know that. And so this is going to be a close call for Tokyo. I don't know. I'm almost thinking, hey, if it's a little closer, Mark might jump on a plane and go to Tokyo. Just stay there. I don't have to worry about driving down or getting a train or whatever to the southern islands. I will see. I'm just, I don't want to get your hopes up, but there's enough time. This is more than 6 days out. I got my eyes on it. And if it's close enough to Tokyo, in vicinity, within a couple of hours, cab ride. Do they have Uber over there? I mean, James Reynolds, maybe he could help me out. I might consider this. I really might. We'll see. Anyway, that's day 6. And as we go through day 7 here, finally, it heads on up into the northwestern Pacific. And yes, the heights remain low over here out of eastern Russia. And the high pressure area gets squeezed and whatever. This goes around it. So we'll watch. Big time typhoon could come close to Tokyo. I will have my eyes on it and figure out which one of my kidneys I want to sell for the plane ticket to get over to Tokyo, perhaps. We shall see. Stay tuned. All right. 1 year ago, come on, where's me? 1 year ago, the National Hurricane Center began issuing advisories on potential tropical cyclone number 14, and it went on to become Tropical Depression 14 down in the Northwest Caribbean. And isn't this an interesting parallel? I mentioned this yesterday. We already had Leslie spinning around this time last year up in the subtropics in the North Atlantic. We had this brewing, part of that Central American gyre, right? Which is exactly what we're talking about this coming week. With low pressure festering around in the Atlantic, Central American gyre setting up. We know that we never get the exact same outcome. It's just an interesting analog. What we saw last year, kind of analogous to what we're seeing setting up in the week ahead. Nevertheless, this did go on to become Hurricane Michael, as we all know. This was the first discussion, and this was from Dr. Jack Bevan. And as you may recall, the forecast was for it to be 70 miles per hour, pretty close to Panama City, Mexico Beach area, Tyndall Air Force Base, somewhere in there with the center at 96 hours out. So that was a great track forecast on the intensity because it made landfall as 140 knots, Category 5 hurricane. I was there, as you know. Brent, my partner from the U.S. Virgin Islands, came up, and that's where I will start going from here, is kind of retracing our steps and what we did to cover that historic event, leading up to the fact that I am going to be going back to that area this week. On Tuesday, I'll head out. I'm going to go down. I'm going to meet with some people on Wednesday, and then Thursday we're going to show the Michael segment of the 2018 documentary. I'll put a link to that documentary in today's description of the video post here if you haven't seen it yet. And it's really going to be nice to be able to just see the people again. Some people I have gotten to know pretty well, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of the newer people, well, new in my life, that know about the documentary. They've heard about the yellow box that recorded the footage there, and where toucans got annihilated, and just how all of that happened. What did we learn from it, and where do we go from here? I have this special connection as I've met people over the course of my career, going back 25 years now, all the different people that I have met because hurricanes wrecked their town. What a strange thing it is. It's very strange. But many of these people I have stayed friends with over these past 2 decades. And I've seen them recover. I see them deal with hurricanes, afterwards. And it's just remarkable. One day, I'm definitely going to do a book. It's going to be about that thick. And it's going to give one of the Harry Potter novels a run for its money. But it won't be a novel. It'll be true stories. So stay tuned to that, probably after I turn 50. Something like that. Let me see if I can get rid of me so I can say goodbye. All right? A nice way to end the afternoon here. So a lot to keep up with. I am excited about going back next week to visit the folks down in the Panhandle and elsewhere. Tomorrow, I will firm up my plans as to exactly when and where. I'm 90% sure of it, but I just want to make sure. And if you're in the area and you want to stop by, we're going to show the Michael section again, the segment from the documentary, on like a wall in a restaurant in Mexico Beach. I mean, I think that's perfect. And I'll be talking about it and tweeting about it and whatever. And, we don't celebrate it, but we remember, and we remember for a reason. And we'll talk about those reasons coming up. All right? All right. That is it from me for this afternoon. I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Lots to watch over the next week or so. Going to be interesting. As always, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your time, your attention, your support. It's awesome. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.